Welcome to Altenberg, Germany, our first German track of the season. We started out our season in China in Yangqing, checking out what the Olympic track will bring us for this year. We spent back-to-back World Cups in Sochi, and now we are here back in the motherland, Germany. Let's take a look at the weather. 97% humidity. Normally would feel that would be a problem if the weather was a little warmer. Air is at 0 degrees. Great racing weather. Ice has been consistent. We saw with the doubles. Not a lot of variation in the ice changing, so we were able to have consistent times with what was going on. But let's take a look at the track. We've got 15 curves. We noticed with the doubles they started going into curve 6, but the women actually start higher, which kind of makes them deal with the top of the track. It's a lot more flat at the top, which makes a big difference in terms of timing and being quiet in the sled. But we'll take you down the track right here. This track hits a total of 6 Gs coming into Kreisel. It's a perfect blend of technical and speed, and it's not really a flowing track. It's a lot more of a driving track. So there's a lot of hard steers, including right here out of 9 into this long straightaway going into Kreisel. They want to have a nice early entrance to catch the pressure, and this is where they're going to hit those Gs. Struggling to keep their heads up. It's a lot of neck muscles for them here at the track. In the bottom of the track right here, this is where they're going to hit their top speeds. They want to be quiet in the sled, and they want to have their lines be precise. Right here, this is a zero gravity moment. If their line is off just by a little bit, it'll just expand it immensely, and they can lose a lot of time here at the bottom. So the secret to success here in Altenberg is going to be on time with your drives and just to be quiet in the sled. Let's take a look at our start list. And hello guys, my name is Kate Hansen, and I am here to talk about this race, and I'm so excited. And I'm joined with an amazing commentator, been calling races for over 30 years, Tim Singer. Welcome to calling this race.
Thanks very much, Kate, and great job with that open as we look forward to watching 28 lugers make their way down the track that we just saw the POV camera sled come down. Keep an eye on Julia Tobitz, third to last to go. Julia is currently leading the World Cup. She's coming off 2 consecutive victories last weekend in Russia, and she is on her home track. But we have 25 coming down before we get a good look at Julia. And first up, Olena Shmaha of the Ukraine. It's been a great qualifying weekend for the country of Ukraine. Week in and week out, they rarely get athletes in the top 20. But Kate, this week they have 3 double sleds, 2 women's singles, and 2 men's singles. So 7 athletes qualifying for the World Cup race is pretty good.
Yeah, and it's very cool seeing these smaller nations because, again, I mean, we mentioned it earlier in the other race. They don't even have a home track. They're traveling so much throughout the year. So to see this type of success for one of the smaller countries, it's cool to see the advancements in their program.
Olena from the city of Lviv in the northwest section of the Ukraine, and really tough exit there. A lot of tight turns down here at the bottom.
Yeah, your line really has to be on. I mean, the jet boosters really turn on in Kreisel, and then from there sometimes it can just go straight into a blur. So if that line is off just a little bit, that 11-12 transition will just flip you nicely right over. So hopefully these women can keep their line on. It should be a really exciting race. I'm excited to watch this.
Finish time of 53.940. Incidentally, 52.036 is the track record. That was set in 2017 by Natalie Geisenberger, also in today's field.
That's some nice height right there in the 13-14 transition. That's what you want going in 14, a nice early entrance, so you can kind of cut the pressure and sustain height throughout to make sure you come out middle. So that was a great transition by the Ukrainian.
Raluca Stramatraru next up. First from Romania, only from Romania in today's competition. A lot of syllables in the next 2 athletes. Raluca Stramatraru, followed by Yuliana Tunitska of Ukraine. Raluca says the hardest part of luge for her is when it's about the thing you like most to do, it's nothing hard. She says there is no hard part about the sport when I asked her about it. She says she loves it. So that's a great attitude to have, and that led her to a top 10 finish at the last Olympics.
Oh my gosh, that was so cool to see. I feel like that was a victory for everybody to see her do so well. And I mean, she's just one of the veterans. She's been at so many World Cups and has seen varying levels of success. So to see her peak at the Olympics, I was just so happy for her.
36 years old from Bastănări in Romania. Her split time well out ahead of the Ukrainian. And it was a nice smooth exit. She skids but recovers well.
She was having a nice looking run until that 14-15 transition. And we might see that with women today. I mean, the pressure and speed is different than the doubles, and so that might be an interesting transition to watch, especially over that zero gravity crest between 14-15.
Tough start for the season for Raluca, whose best result was at 21st place. She was well on her way there until the end, but this Altenberg track can bite them and spit them out.
Absolutely. What I was just going to say right before that, I mean, she drives well. I mean, she's been around for a while. She knows these tracks. Sometimes the speed doesn't match the quality of her runs, and unfortunately that run kind of got her right at the end.
Now, Juliana Tonichka, the next up for Ukraine. 30th place finish last year at her one and only World Championship. Of course, in Olympic years, they do not hold the World Championship. Some sports do. Sliding sports do not. The Olympics are the World Championships, although there will be a European Championships in January in Switzerland.
And we just had our, Asia Pacific Championship?
Exactly, the Pan-Pacific, America-Pacific competition. I think the women's winner was Summer Richer. Hey, if you're just tuning in to listen to Kate and I with the call, we don't want you to just listen, but we want you to talk. So please send your comments and your questions to us on Twitter at Luge Announcer, by email, luge.announcer@gmail.com, and hard off, what was that, curve 12?
No, that was the same as Raluca, 14-15. So
14,
we may see a trend today.
That's a tough little section. That's right near where it goes. There's an overpass right there, a little bridge, right?
Yeah, what happens is you have to sustain height coming into the end of 14. So, and that starts with the beginning of 14, which really starts with 13. So it all just becomes sequential after each other. So what we want to see is a nice even line coming through 14 so they don't come out too soon. Right here, this was looking good, and then it just kind of broke out to the right. I wonder if maybe she was shifting a little bit, or maybe her suspension might be a little loose, but I thought that exit was going to be great, but unfortunately, it just wasn't the case.
There are two athletes in today's competition for whom this is their home track. The aforementioned Yulia Tobits, and this woman here, Eileen Frisch, representing the Republic of Korea, where she was a top 10 placer at the Olympic Games. But this is the track where Eileen grew up and learned how to luge.
There's a lot of advantages to this being your home track. I mean, every home track kind of says a lot about the athlete and how they know how to drive. Very uncharacteristic for Eileen to have that issue out of 9. I mean, of all people, with this being her home track, she knows every circumstance with how 9 works. She still has the lead. We'll see if that holds on into the bottom. She knows all the secrets into the bottom of the track, so we'll see if it stays in the green.
It does, and the speed is good, 69.4, but now she moves into the red down here at the bottom, and I'm not sure if that was a product of some earlier mistakes that finally compounded down below. Eileen is not one of the larger athletes, so she doesn't carry that natural body momentum gravity down.
Right, yeah, when you have a body type that is not, oh yeah, right there. I'm surprised by that. She knows better than to have that happen. But again, I mean, it's the pressures going through 9. You have to catch it on the beginning. So once you're already in that situation, there's not much you can do but just eat the wall and just take it. So she managed all right, but I think she has a lot more in her for her second run.
First of the four Americans, rather. Welcome back, Emily Sweeney, coming a little later on. But this is Brittany Arndt, one of two from the Western program of Park City, Utah. The longtime development director, John Owen, who has produced so many great athletes out of the Salt Lake Trek. Even time right now to the current leader there at the start.
Yeah, that really is a great program coming out of Park City, and it's fun. I mean, like I was mentioning before, the home track says a lot about an athlete. So Park City is known for speed, being really relaxed, and this is a driving track. So it's interesting to see how Brittany will be able to transfer between driving and speed tracks, and it looks so far she's managing it great, staying in the green. A little bit of height right there, but she's managed it well, and she keeps her transitions really clean.
Trying to come on when it matters. She nearly has a disaster there as she steers away from that wall at the last moment. Brittany Arndt, number 4 on the depth chart for the U.S. right now, skidding across the finish, 53.597 into the lead. But Kate, by your observation, I'm sure you'll say it could have been even faster.
Absolutely. Could have been faster, but she didn't lose that much time, it was kind of good news that it happened when it did. She kind of had a clear exit, and then it broke out right over the hump going in, but luckily it didn't break out too much. Yeah, right here. She just came out a little too soon. She's shifting a little bit. You really want to be quiet in the sled. When you come out that early, you're kind of holding your breath a little bit, especially over that zero gravity moment, and she was kind of just moving a little too much. Fortunately, she didn't lose that much time, but she has more in her.
Here's 21-year-old Zigita Berzina, the first of the Latvian contingent here, a couple of whom, her teammates, could end up on the podium later today. But let's see what the youngster of the squad can manage. 41 athletes qualified for, or actually tried to qualify for the race yesterday in the Nations Cup. Only 16 qualified, but that's a huge number. And among those that did not qualify were Madeleine Egle, who was the first one out, that unfortunate spot, and also athletes from China, Taipei, Poland, Czech Republic, Korea, Ireland, Bulgaria, the Netherlands, and 3 out of 4 of the Canadians did not make it into the main field today. So things are probably more pressure-filled and competitive the day before the World Cup, Kate.
Yeah, that's a big day, Nations Cup. And even though we're not seeing, those countries you just listed, Nations Cup is still a really big race for those athletes. Similar issues. This is going to be an exciting race. But like I said, for those countries, they still can gather World Cup points through Nations Cup. And wow, pulled it, a surprise right there, pulled it out in the last few curves, a half a tenth ahead. Wow, I'm surprised to see that. I didn't think that was going to happen.
This may become, at least what we're seeing here, one of those living on the edge races where the only way to win is to be taking gambles and coming off hard off of curves in hopes of being able to stay out of trouble.
I really liked her transition out of 9. I thought that was really clean. There was no lateral movement, no correction she had to make. Seems like her loops were also timed well for Kreisel, and it managed to help out her 11-12. It's all sequential. It all bleeds into one another, and I think she handled it. She handled it well until her 14. I mean, we might see that a few times.
Marian Oberhofer, the first of the Italians in today's race, 21 years old, from Rodeneck in northern Italy. A good time to mention that Sandra Robacher, a veteran Italian who has won a World Cup on this track, is again not in the World Cup field. Sandra did race yesterday in the Nations Cup as a non-qualifier. In fact, she finished 4th, but she continues to recover from injuries. It will be interesting to see if there is a spot on the Olympics for her, and we may find out more on her home track next week in Innsbruck.
She's gaining some good speed. That was a nice straightaway out of 9. That's where everything really kind of turns on for these sleds. That was a part of the track that really kind of scared me, actually. This track was always difficult. But right there, I love that nice, easy cross going into 15. I mean, she's putting on a great run.
And she crosses the finish line 2 tenths ahead of the rest of the field. Early going still, 7 sleds in. Italy, leading over Latvia and the USA. And again, Kate, we mentioned it during the doubles, but what a far cry from the last couple of weeks in Russia and even China for that matter, where this track will continue to produce fast times from start to finish. It's in great shape.
Yeah, it really makes such a difference, and it makes it an even playing field. I mean, we saw in Sochi last week and the week before, there's so much variance to it that it's just frustrating as an athlete. So to have this consistency is really nice.
Trinity Ellis, the lone Canadian out of 4 to qualify for today's race, is just a good sign that Coach Staudinger has been bringing more than a couple this year, and all 4 of them have seen some World Cup race action. But Ellis has certainly been the class of that quartet, with top 20s in every race, including a 10th on the Olympic track opening weekend in Beijing.
These North American programs, it's kind of a different ball game for these teams because, there's so many other sports that are popular. Basketball, football, soccer. Whereas in Germany, or in Europe, these are hometown really popular sports. So it's a lot easier to get depth to your program. So sometimes we'll see some younger athletes with Canada because we'll see gaps in their development. And their development production.
In Trinity's home nation of Canada, I believe there is another ice sport that's somewhat more popular than luge.
I was literally going through, I'm like, which one's he talking about?
They do like their hockey in Canada.
Third
place right now, ahead of the American, behind Italy and Latvia, Trinity Ellis. Run number 1 of 2 here outside of Dresden, Germany.
Kind of flopped off that curve, but it flopped off of Kreisel, but it could have been a lot worse. She slid off of 12 right there, but she managed to keep her composure. That can be scary sometimes, especially they only get around 7 or 8 runs to learn these tracks. So that was a consistent run.
Verena Hoffa, the next of the Italians, 20 years old. Finished 32nd in the World Cup overall 2 years ago, 14th, all the way up to 14th last year. Her best finish so far this season, an 11th place. The Italians did very well on that Beijing track.
Yeah, that Yangqing World Cup, it's interesting to see because sometimes people will be testing things out during that World Cup. And so sometimes countries will kind of be under the radar. They try and stay under the radar to kind of pull out their full stuff for the Olympics. So it's a good test to see, but you'd never actually know until we show up in Beijing to see the race.
Well into the green at the last split. Hofer now with this exit hits hard out of 15. She will lose that 300ths of advantage, no question about it, as it turns red. Wow, it's just one error late in the run, costing her 4 spots effectively.
The nerves are all over the place when athletes are this young. Or at least for me, when I was this age, I was so nervous. And so usually it's just those 2 consistent runs that they look for. And so if she can get down a second run decently well, she should still be proud of herself. But right there, major issue. You could kind of see she came out pointed into the left wall. She should have caught that pressure a little better into 14 and carried the height all the way around. And that's what led to her issues.
Now Switzerland's Madeleine Egle next to go. Starter number 10 out of 28 in today's race. 5 paddles, it appears. Many more. The doubles riders earlier today, the sliders had just 3 paddles, and it really differentiates from track to track and even start ramp to start ramp how many paddles you use.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll see some people will be more aggressive. They'll go for more, but then you're kind of playing with fire a little bit with your settle. If the sled starts going faster than your paddles, then the settle could be uneven, which could lead to even more problems. So you really kind of got to test the waters on what you're most comfortable with.
Natalie had her first ever podium late last season on her home track in St. Moritz. She grew up in Switzerland tobogganing from the time she was a little girl, and that's kind of the rule when you live in Switzerland. .44 thousandths of a second in back of the Italian in the early going. We have Italy, followed by Switzerland and Latvia. 10 have come down, 18 remain in run number 1.
I feel like her time didn't really represent the type of run that it was. I thought that the bottom of the track actually looked really good. I thought she was going to come up in the green, so I'm a little surprised. But right here at the top, this is really important for the women because they really want to be quiet and still. Any type of jerking movement is going to pay a lot at the bottom, and so that could be a weight issue too. Sometimes heavier girls will be able to be a lot faster at the top of the track.
The first of the Russians getting ready, 18-year-old Diana Loganova. And a question comes into us, as it does most weeks, Kate, from Luge Moms, located in the United States. And they would like to know, for the athletes who are just getting their boxes with racing equipment included, do we know if they will be using that equipment or staying with what they have trained on through the week? I've got some background on that. I'm not sure what you've heard.
You know more than I do, actually.
Just so everyone knows, there's been an ongoing problem for 3 weeks since the races in China, where the sleds and a lot of other equipment did not arrive in Russia, and some are just still arriving in Germany. I hear that some of the athletes are using their equipment, others are using, big problem here, as she skids her way but rights the ship down near the bottom. So just to finish that, some are borrowing their sleds still, some are using their own equipment, but other things such as helmets, two-way radios, gloves, some things have not yet arrived, and it just has become a debacle the last few weeks.
Sounds like a true nightmare from an athlete's point of view. I mean, so much of the sport is just consistency and having comfortability in what you train in, and so for the athletes that have had to adjust, I mean, it's very impressive.
It's incredible, Kate. When you think about it, of course, everyone has to go back and is eager to go back. Ooh, what happened here?
Yeah, so this actually started at the end of Kreisel. She crossed too much, and she hit the right wall right before the curve. And if it just would have waited, maybe another foot, she would have been fine, but she hit the right wall and just sent her late into the curve.
The third of the 4 Italians, Nina Zugler, up now. 20 years old, will turn 21 during the luge competition at the Olympic Games. Nina made her World Cup debut at the age of 16, not long after her legendary father retired. So what I was going to say is that, everyone's headed back to China for the Olympic Games, looking forward to that. But it makes you wonder whether the World Cup will ever return there again after what's gone on the last few weeks with the equipment not getting out of there.
Yeah, it's probably left a pretty bitter taste, which is unfortunate because the Beijing track is such an interesting track. I mean, I think it offers so many different aspects of sliding, and it's always unfortunate too, when they hold the Winter Games and they don't use the facilities after. So I hope there's some type of, redemption in that experience, but you may be really right, Tim.
7 thousandths of a second, the ultra slim margin that Zugler takes the lead over her teammate Marion Oberhofer. Italy 1-2, Switzerland 3, about halfway through run number 1 as we make our way down to the final of the qualifying group rather.
She had some nice height right there. Kind of gives her a great transition into 14. That's kind of what you're looking for, is you want to be able to have the height to swing you over to these curves, because if you go too late, you're just not strong enough to cut through that pressure. So overall, that was a clean run.
Ekaterina Ketnikova, the next of the Russians on course now. She had a podium finish here last year at the World Cup in Altenberg, one of her few podiums. Of course, she has a world championship to her credit. But last week was sort of a funky one for Ekaterina, Kate, as she was in podium position in both Sochi World Cups after the first run and fell way back in the second heat. She could not put two together.
Yeah, and that also, I mean, we mentioned it earlier. It's nice that this ice here in Altenberg is so consistent, but in Sochi, it just was wild. I mean, those wild times with the humidity and the frost, and the ice was just warm, and so I'm sure that didn't really help her cause either when she was going last for her race in the second run.
27-year-old from Chusavoy, Russia, in the center portion of this huge nation. Having some good lines here, showing experience on this Altenberg track. 800s up, can she hang on to that? To the finish, into the lead, in fact, extending that. And earlier today, Kate, in the doubles competition, maybe for the first time in a season and a half, we did see the Russians do their famous pickup time at the bottom of the track maneuver.
Oh, you know, the infamous move. Yeah, she drove this run really well, actually, and I really loved her exit out of 14. She almost had this, like, effortless rollback that just kind of helped set her line so she didn't cross too much. Yeah, that world championship in her, that showed in that run.
Hanna Prock from Austria up now, a one-time podium winner on the World Cup several years ago on the Königssee track. And Jim tweets in a question for us. Kate, some of the women who are very slight of build, such as Frisch and Hanna Prock, seem to not be wearing weights. Is there a downside to not running all the way up to your maximum allowed weight?
That's a good question. I can't say for sure if they are wearing weight or not. I know, you know, weight tends to be pretty visible, but sometimes, like, if they're wearing weight, you know, on their back or on the back of their legs, like, we wouldn't really be able to tell. But the only advantage in doing that is that you'll have a faster start because you're pulling less weight, essentially. But then here in the bottom of the track, it might not work to your favor. So it might be a gamble that someone will play on a more technical track like this, but overall, I would imagine people would put in a weight that's most comfortable for them.
The diminutive Prock suffering from lack of large size. She found some time down at the bottom. She had been over a 10th back, but not enough to overtake the Russian. So, Kate, I know in bobsled they can throw some big weights right into the sled. Are there places on the sled, on a luge sled, incidentally luge is a French word for sled, where you can add extra weight?
Yeah, so you can put it underneath in the pod where, like, there's little, like, leg holds that we notice when they get off the track. There's actually space in there to put the weight, but it's not that simple. Well, you could also put it under the pad where they lay, but it's not that simple because it actually messes with the balance point of the sled. So, like, if there's too much weight on the shoulders, you could be digging in. If there's too much weight on the front, then you don't really have control. So it's all it's about precision.
Elena Vitola, second qualifying leader yesterday in the Nations Cup. Only Emily Sweeney had a faster time for qualifying. Incidentally, the winner of the Nations Cup was Germany's Cheyenne Rosenthal, who entered as a non-qualifier. And that was on the heels of her gold medal in the World Cup the week before in doubles. So don't say that Chris Mazder's the only World Cup singles and doubles competitor anymore.
Get it, girl, represent.
Really solid lead going on here at the midway point out of the Ice Canal Kreisel.
Oof. Oh, shit. This is going to be bad. Oh, yeah. That end of Kreisel, she hit right and went dead late into 11. That can be a scary position to be in. She managed to stay on the sled, but a lot of times that'll just flip him right over. She
will fall a dozen spots or so back as a result of one of the larger mistakes we've seen. A second behind the leading Russian. And for you, Kate, the question is, we know the Latvians have such an incredible ability to set up these sleds really fast. Is it possible to set it up too quick for an athlete that's not yet ready to handle it on a tough track?
Great question. I love that question because it actually kind of comes down to coach's discretion for that. So like if a coach is seeing that an athlete's not training well, then they'll set up the sled to how they think it should be. But sometimes if if a coach is overconfident, they might roll their steels a little too much and then they won't have grip. But I mean, usually the coaches they tend to be pretty spot on with what they think. So it is possible to set it up too fast, but they tend to go more grip instead of roll.
Yesterday's top qualifier was American Emily Sweeney. Emily finished 16th in the World Cup opener, and then due to her military restrictions, she was unable to compete the last 2 weeks in Russia. So she trained in Germany. She's back now. She had the quickest qualifying time yesterday and is a one-time World Cup winner in her career.
A very consistent slider. One thing I want to point out is her position and how relaxed she looks in the sled. She might not have the size compared, speaking of size, she might not have the size compared to some of the bigger athletes, but with how she gels in the sled, she's able to just react and respond so well and drive incredible lines.
Really nicely done off of that curve, building on her lead. The American 1300ths up, that speed at 71 miles per hour to the finish. And she has the lead. It's USA over Russia and Austria. Emily Sweeney in the lead with 12 remaining in run number 1. And Kate, your former teammate, you talk about guts. At the last Olympics, she had a wicked crash, famous crash on television. What a lot of people don't know is during that crash, she broke her neck. And the next year she was back and winning world championship medals.
Yeah, her story is something a movie should be written about. She missed the first 2 Olympics that she went for and made her third time's a charm, and then had this horrific crash that she just made it look so easy to come back from. And she's an incredible athlete with a lot of resilience. And hopefully she's able to put down some great races this year.
Now another former World Cup winner, a one-time winner, Victoria Demchenko of Russia, who 2 weeks ago finished on the podium, 3rd place on her home track, trying to come back from a rather lackluster year last season.
She's another athlete. There's other ones, Prock and Ziegler. They come from a lineage of just a dynasty within Luge, and so much of Luge runs within the family. So it's fun to see, a lot of these legends, their children sliding so well, and it's exciting to see what they can do with the sled and with their runs.
Father Albert, a 2-time Olympic medalist, as Demchenko continues to lose more time to the American. She crosses in 3rd place. It's USA over a pair of Russians. Demchenko, the first of the seeded group. And a quick correction, Kate, Elsa writes in saying that Chris Masner isn't currently the only one on the circuit racing singles and doubles, because the Moldova athlete, Sishenu, also competes in both. So thanks to Elsa for that update. Elsa, representing Ireland, also raced yesterday in the Nations Cup competition. Next up, we have a pair of Americans with one already leading the way. Here's Summer Britcher. Summer earned her first women's singles podium last week in Sochi, a 2nd place in the sprint competition. She was also part of a USA silver medal relay team in Beijing. And the Americans also captured a podium in women's doubles last weekend. So let's see what the USA's best can do here. Not a relatively quick start.
Yeah, not the fastest start, but she drives very well. She's able to make up speed and make up time pretty easily. And so she's almost she's been able to have incredible results throughout her career. It just depends if she's on. If she's on, she is taking names and she is breaking records. If she's not, sometimes she's not sliding as fast as she knows she could. So she's her toughest critic. she knows how to slide, and she can do it well. So we'll see if she's able to pull it together today. And she's making up time.
Making up time. We haven't seen that a lot. We saw an exciting finish in the doubles where red turned green. Let's see if Summer can pull that off, and she does.
Wow.
Red the entire way until the final split. It's USA, Russia, the top three right now. And Kate, to your point, Summer said right before the season, she said heading into the 2018 Olympics, she was peaking in all aspects of the sport except mentally. She wasn't ready to handle the pressure. That's her quote exactly. Now she's 4 years more mature and seemingly ready to tackle anything.
Yeah, I mean, she's coming into her third Olympics. I mean, she's so young and already a three-time Olympian. I mean, if they kind of say the first Olympics, you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Second Olympics, you know, you're ready to just take care of business. And third Olympics, you're ready to take some names. So I think this will be an exciting year for Britcher.
Meantime, the young Americans from Park City, Utah, Farquharson and Arndt, are looking to qualify for their first Olympics. And here is Ashley Farquharson, had an 8th place finish opening weekend of the season, is currently in 10th in the World Cup overall standings. And as of right now, alluding to what we talked about in the doubles, the USA does have 3 sleds qualified in women's singles. That's, of course, if they were to have the cutoff right now. Still a lot of racing in the weeks ahead.
Yeah, a lot of racing. And with Olympic year, honestly, it's such a long process to name the Olympic team that truly anything can happen. And, you know, it kind of looks like Sweeney, you know, she missed the 2 World Cups abroad. And then, and with Arndt trying to figure it out, it's going to be tight racing for the American women.
Trailing, and unlike her American counterparts who just came down, Farquharson doesn't seem to be finding any time down at the bottom. She was 0.3 back, now it's a ½ second back. So way back in 13th place, the USA 1, 2, 11, and 13, with the 4 sleds having come down. Natalie Geisenberger, incidentally, on deck for Germany.
This was interesting because I didn't really see anything too dramatic. And actually, I take it back right there. I didn't notice that in the regular run. She slid straight off of 13. You could see she was really trying to crank the coof in with her right foot, and the nose was not turning. So that's probably exactly where she lost her time.
Last week, Natalie Geisenberger had to qualify to get into the field. She did it, of course. Today, she's in the seeded group, but still in that second tier of the seeded group. All that said, of course, Kate, you're looking at the greatest ever in the history of women's luge. 51 World Cup victories, 8 World Cup overalls. Both of those totals second only to legendary Armin Zugler of Italy.
Yeah, she's incredibly decorated. And people will ask me this. They're like, why are the Germans so dominant? Like, what is the secret sauce? Like, what's going on over there? And really, the German program, it's like they're almost just a different league a little bit. Like, with the funding and the knowledge and the coaching and the sleds, like, they really just have anything they need is at their fingertips. And then, of course, they start the sport, you know, when they're 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and sliding is such a big rite of passage in Germany. So it's really just a complete package, especially with her body type. I mean, she wins it all, and it makes sense.
Summer Britcher appeared to be a little faster down in the final few curves. Geisenberger at the top. So she holds 1/10 of a second lead over the Americans. Natalie Geisenberger back where she feels she belongs on top of the leaderboard. And Kate, there's another component, of course. They start young, they have the equipment, they have the coaching, they have the tracks, but they have the numbers. And so when you get to the senior level here at the World Cup, these are women that competed against 500 others to finally get to that point. And even in countries such as the USA and Canada and Russia, maybe that number is 100 that you're competing against to finally get here. So it's just such a strong sport in this nation.
Absolutely. I mean, it would be kind of similar to like basketball in America or baseball. You know, it's like there's so many kids that want to play those sports that if one person doesn't do well, there's another one to fill their spot. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Just ask Cheyenne Rosenthal or Sebastian Bly or the Orla Munder Gabit's doubles team. These are all among the best in the world, and they're not even making the World Cup team at the moment. Now from Austria, Lisa Schulte, who earlier this year captured her first ever World Cup podium. 3rd place in Beijing. That was such an incredible track for all of the Austrians. They were just dialed in, and they have got to be licking their chops for the upcoming Olympics.
Yeah, Olympic year really is like, you just never know, and so much of it comes down to, you know, countries have been testing for years. Like, they have been waiting for this moment to kind of bring out their best runners, bring out, you know, their best bridges. Everything they've been testing has been for this year. And so we might see a lot of mixing of the standings and where people are because, you know, they finally get to bring out all the stuff that they've tested.
Unfortunately, Schulte did not follow that podium up with decent results. She was 16th and 17th in the next 2 races. She skids across the finish in 10th place. That may have been a 6th or 7th had she not had the late problem. Look how disappointed
right
she is.
Yeah, it was right out of curve 14, and then it honestly went from like bad to worse, and I was thinking maybe she might have flipped over in the end, but yeah, right here she was trying to correct with her feet, and it was just a little too much. Sends her straight and then dead late into this curve. This is scary. Almost hitting woods. You're just hanging on for your life right there. It's a wild horse ride when you're going late into those bottom curves.
Head coach Renny Friedel, former competitor for Germany, who's now been the longtime program director of this Austrian team. Andrea Vetter, for several seasons the strongest of the Italian women, but she has sort of come back to the pack this year as the trio of youngsters, Hofer, Oberhofer, and Zogler, have put in results equal to Vetter for the most part. She's currently out of the top 10 in the World Cup, 11th place. Her best result, a 7th last weekend in Russia. You hear the excited voice of Mark Hufa, who's the PA announcer, former world-class weightlifter, does the great bilingual public address.
A lot of these Italian athletes, I mean, while, you know, the Cortina track is being adjusted, or they're rebuilding it right now, their home track is Eagles, which is a more speed track. So they know how to be calm and relaxed in the sled. Sometimes at driving tracks like this, it's not really their forte, but it seems like she's doing all right. She is losing time right now. She's in the red. Going to be coming up behind, unfortunately, but oh yeah, her team right there, Sandy.
Was that Sandra? Yes, yeah, so Sandra Robacher, glad to see she's cheering everyone on, glad to see she's racing in the Nations Cup, and we hope to see her back in the World Cup field. She won a race. This is not Vetter, this is Robacher, 3 years ago on this track on an incredibly snowy day. They may have even shortened that race to 1 heat.
A win is a win, you know?
That's right.
Follows you the rest of your life.
6 remain. Geisenberger out in front. We still have a trio of contending Germans to come down, but before they do, it's one of the great stories of recent past weeks in Luge is the emergence of this woman, Candia Apariod of Latvia. She had captured 1, maybe 2 podiums prior to this season, but what a stay she had in Russia. All of the Latvians, for that matter. Her brother won a race, and Candia had a 2nd, a 3rd, and a 4th in the 3 competitions in Sochi.
I love seeing success and consistent success from younger athletes. I just remember competing, and it was so, I mean, your nerves are just everywhere. So to see these like ice in your veins women that are just pulling out these runs, it's very impressive. I love to see it.
Ooh, she had to do some steering there. That was interesting. She stayed off the wall, but a quick left turn and then a correction.
It could have been a lot worse. She managed it very well. It was kind of an opposite problem than what a lot of these other athletes are having. That seemed like a little bit of an issue in that transition. A nice, I mean, a pretty good power skid She's just bleeding time from here on out.
Yeah, that cost her the rest of the way down. 5th place, 2/10, nearly a quarter of a second back. And I've been told, Kate, and you can clarify this, that often it's the hitting of the walls that look dramatic, but it's actually the steering of the sled that costs you more time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that digging in. You're right there. A little bit of a micro skid, but she didn't panic. I have panicked many times at that spot, just wanting to set the feet down, get it straight. But she kind of just nicely, gently drove it back into the wall to kind of set the line straight. I mean, that's a veteran move. That was impressive. But yeah, that transition at the bottom, it was looking good, and then she just kind of broke out into the skid, and you can't recover from that at that point.
Germany placed the top four of the top 5 yesterday in the final day of seeded training. It's very conceivable that Germany could sweep the podium in today's women's competition. A page out of days of yore with Zilka Otto and Anke Wisniewski and Krauschauer and Hufner when they used to week in and week out sweep the podium. Here is the next threat to Geisenberger, her Bavarian teammate, Anna Birreiter, 3-time World Cup winner.
I feel like, the difference you just mentioned, I'm thinking about all those legends you just mentioned with Team Germany. It's cool to see, different shapes and sizes do well in this sport. I mean, back then, a lot of the women were incredibly strong. They had great body types. They had a lot of weight on them, which is a good thing in luge. And then we see these younger, smaller, petite girls doing well. And so it's cool just to see, anyone can excel at luge if they have all the right resources and what they need. And so I just love seeing the difference in all this. And of course, in German fashion, she will most likely come up in the green, almost a 10th.
Yeah, 71 miles an hour. The Bavarians are 1-2. We still have 2 Germans remaining from this region of the country, so it'll be interesting to see what they say. And Kate, that's a great point. Natalie is tall, she's muscular. Anna, probably the middle prototype. Diana's coming up next. She's tall and lean, and then Yulia Tobits is frankly small, but they're all good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it really is such a difference. This was a lot of height, which we haven't really seen, and that height really gave her a nice cross into 14. That kind of gave a great picture of what the height should be looking like. Yeah, true German fashion. They're just great. They're great drivers.
New mother and multi-time World Cup winner Diana Eitberger, originally from Oberhof, now bases herself in Munich, but trains on all of these German tracks. And we should note that last year's winner of this World Cup race, Tatiana Ivanova, is not in today's competition. Tatiana broke her leg during the relay competition in Russia opening weekend, and we can only hope that she will be back in time for the second half of the season to qualify for the Olympic Games. Diana trailing quite a bit from the Bavarians in the early going.
There was a little bit, I noticed in the top curve, she kind of bumped early onto one of those curves, and it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it actually totally plays into all of this. It's just so flat up there. Speed doesn't really start happening until curve 9, so it seems like things are just kind of compounding for her. But as a German, she could make up a lot of time here at the bottom, so we can't speak too soon.
That's right, and it will be telling to see both this and the next sled how the Thuringians have set up the sled, Jan Eichhorn and company, as she does lose additional time down at the bottom with Tobits on deck. It's Birreiter ahead of Geisenberger, Germany, Italy, and a pair of Americans. That's the top 5 with the final 3 to come.
She's a little confused, and I would also be confused because her run, there wasn't anything that would explain the 3/10 behind. I think this is a true textbook setup, like a misread of a setup, and maybe, see that face. That's it right there. It's really frustrating to have clean runs. Oh,
and she gets the red light. They will test the sled. They will weigh the athlete.
Insult to injury right there.
And from the scowling Eitberger to the always smiling Yulia Tobits, coming off of 2 victories last weekend in Russia. This is her home track. Julia trains out of Oberhof, but she grew up not far from here in Saxony, near Dresden, in the town of Annenberg. Julia, the World Cup overall champion 2 years ago, she said she was very sad that spectators would not be allowed at today's competition due to ongoing COVID restrictions, and she had to give back 40 tickets that she had gotten for family. And just like that, she makes that magic happen on the track in the lower half.
Yeah, she really does. I mean, her start isn't the fastest. She doesn't really have like a routine German start. Germans have very strong paddles, very straight arms, really reaching and going for it. And hers just were a little weaker. And I've kind of come to notice with her sliding, but yet she still makes up the time so easily. And I mean, that goes to speak. Her sled setup is just dialed. I mean, she knows what it's like. She knows how it feels. And she's also, she drives really clean lines. So not surprised. She started off in red, comes up 500th in the lead.
That's right. She came back to the field a little bit at the end. It's Germany 1, 2, 3. We have 2 remaining. But I've got to believe that's the way it will stay here. And it will make up a pretty spirited intra-nation duel in run number 2. As you see, Julia, as I predicted, smiling with that World Cup leading yellow bib.
She caught that pressure pretty well in Kreisel. Germans are really good at driving Kreisels because German tracks have Kreisels. We don't really have them in North America or in other tracks, and so they're able to catch those pressures really well, and that's a big part to propel speed. You can either lose a lot of speed in a Kreisel or gain a lot of speed, and she gained a lot. 2
remain. Now Madeleine Egle, the winner of the World Cup opener, youth Olympic bronze medalist in 2016. And yeah, that's right, 4 for 4. All 4 German competitive tracks have Kreisel, and outside of Germany, you would only find that 360 or 270 degree turn Calgary, in Lake Placid, not Lake Placid, Calgary, Beijing, and Innsbruck.
Right, yeah, that's true. And the Yangqing one, I mean, that one's next level. That's a crazy Kreisel.
Madeleine mixed results this year. Aside from that victory, she's followed it up with a 7th, a 5th, and a 10th. Second last. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I was saying it's a little bit more height than maybe what she would have wanted. This is really nitpicky. This is a great run overall. Glad to see she's gaining time, but if she's really, there's a little bit of small transitions, but wow.
Look at that sincere reaction by Renee Friedel, and I stand corrected with my premature prediction that the Germans would hold the top 3 spots, because it looks as if Madeleine Egle is back on form. The speed was sensational, 72.1 miles per hour, the fastest of anyone. No surprise she's in the lead.
That was incredible. I feel like when you see the Germans kind of group together like that, you just assume that that's the top. But for her to come up almost a 10th and a half ahead on a German track, I mean, that's, wow, I am fangirling for her right now. That height was beautiful. Pushed so much height to the end of the track, just crossed her nicely into 14. She really gained so much time in the bottom. That was incredible.
Final competitor in run number 1 from Latvia, Elisa Teruma. No podiums so far to open this season, but very consistent results. Top 7 in every race.
Yeah, this is one of those stories where Elisa, she's just been consistent. I think in the beginning of her career, I mean, she was kind of one of the smaller athletes, but obviously we're seeing with the German athletes that size doesn't really mean much. It doesn't really matter if you have the right side up and if you're able to drive clean lines. So I think with the success that Latvia is having, I'm hoping that it can spill into her success this year. But I mean, already 2/10 behind, that's probably not going to be made up. The track's just not long enough for that.
Latvia has been deep in all 3 disciplines, all 4 counting women's doubles so far this season. So really the complete package. Not the complete run here though for Elisa. going last in run number 1. The track is still holding out well, but her drive lines maybe can be improved. A 53.079 puts her in 7th place.
She had a nice save, 14.15. If they show it, it looked like the sled was really ready to take off and break out, but she had just a nice little leg drive. She saved it pretty well. And despite, I mean, what is she, 3/3800ths back, still within the top 10. It's not bad. It's not bad at all.
There will be shuffling in run number 2. That's a given. The split times are tight, especially places 5 through 15. It's Egle with a pretty safe lead over 3 Germans right now. The American and the Italian are tied for 5th to the 1,000th of a second. Emily Sweeney puts 2 Americans in the top 8. Demchenko sitting in 12th, just behind Eitberger. And to look at all 28, no major crashes, just a bunch of minor mishaps. So everyone will get a second run, and that second run comes up